Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chainaram Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Vadreshu Nityam Gatasevi Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhakti Naishki. So continuing with our discussion, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 16, King Chitraketu meets the Supreme Lord. Text number 1 onwards. Shri Badarayana Ruvacha Athadev Rishi Rajan Sampretam Japatmajam Darshitveti Hovacha Gyati Nam Anushochatam. Sri Shukdev Goswami said, My dear King Parikshit, by his mystic power, the great Sri Narad brought the dead son into the vision of all the lamenting relatives and then spoke as follows. So even after listening to so much instructions, the relatives, especially Maharaj Chitraketu, his wife, they were not pacified. They were still lamenting. So what did Narad Muni do? With his mystic powers, he brought the soul of the dead son back into the body of the son. He could do that. He's so powerful. Shri Narad Vacha Jivatman Pashya Bhadram Te Mataram Pitaram Chate Suhrido Bandhavastapta Shucha Tvatkritya Bhrisham. Shri Narad Muni said, O living entity, all good fortune unto you. Just see your father and mother. All your friends and relatives are overwhelmed with grief because of your passing away. Kalevaram swam avishya shesham ayu suhrid pritaha bhumshva bhogan pitri prattan adhitishtha nripasanam. Because you died untimely, the balance of your lifetime still remains. Therefore, you may re-enter your body and enjoy the remainder of your life, surrounded by your friends and relatives, except the royal throne and all the opulences given by your father. So, see, another thing is, this is 6th canto, almost towards the end of 6th canto. There are 19 chapters. We are at the 16th chapter. So it's almost like end of the 3rd day of Shukdev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj talking. He has only 4 more days left, something like that. So now Shukdev Goswami is going to get more and more strict with his teachings because he wants Maharaj Parikshit to give up all the attachments with the material world and just focus completely on Krishna. Because that's the main goal here with all the stories. See, so far the teachings were going a little bit soft here or there. And the description of the universe or time or this or that. But now as we move further, it's going to get stricter and stricter. Jiva Uvacha. Now, can we imagine if a boy has died and Narad Muni brings the soul back into the body of the boy and he starts speaking? Most of us will run away from that place. But everybody, all the relatives there, they didn't run away, wanted to listen. Kasmin Janmanyami Mayam Pitro Matru Bhavan Karma Bhir Brahmyanasya Devatir Yangriyonishu. Heavy statement. By the mystic power of Narad Muni, the living entity re-entered his dead body for a short time and spoke in reply to Narad Muni's request. He said, according to the results of my fruitive activities, I, the living being, transmigrate from one body to another sometimes going to the species of the demigods, sometimes to the species of lower animals, sometimes among the vegetables, sometimes to the human species. Therefore, in which birth were these my mother and father? No one is actually my mother and father. How can I accept these two people as my parents? Now that's heavy statement coming from this boy who just lost his life and his parents are there crying. And he says, who are these? How can I accept these my mother and father? When I have had so many bodies. Here it is made clear that the living being enters a material body that is like a machine, created by the five gross elements of material nature: earth, water, fire, air, and sky. And the three are subtle elements: mind, intelligence, and ego. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, there are two separate identities called the inferior and superior natures, which both belong to the Supreme Personality of God. According to the results of a living entity's fruitive actions, he is forced to enter the material elements in different types of bodies. This time, the living entity was supposed to have been the son of Maharaj Chitraketu and Queen Kritadyuti, because according to the laws of nature, he had entered a body made by the king and the queen. Actually, however, he was not their son. The living entity is the son of the Supreme Personality of God, and because he wants to enjoy this material world, the Supreme Lord gives him a chance to enter various bodies. The living entity has no true relationship with the material body he gets from his material father and mother. He has no true relationship with the material body he gets from his material father and mother. He is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, but he is allowed to go through different bodies. The body created by the so-called father and mother actually has nothing to do with its so-called creators. Therefore, the living entity flatly denied that Maharaj Chitraketu and his wife were his father and mother. Now that should have opened the eyes of Chitraketu and his wife. That their son, he just woke up and he's saying, who are these? They're not my father and mother. And philosophically, yes, that is true. But we get so attached either to our bodies, our byproducts, whether sons, daughters, or our parents. Of course, we have to serve them. Nobody is denying that. The service has to be there. Taking care of them has to be there. But at the same time, we have to understand this is all temporary. Somebody else was my father and mother in my previous life, and I might have some children in my previous life. So this life I have somebody as my father and mother. Next life I'll have somebody else as my father and some children and some brothers and sisters and friends and relatives. This thing goes on and on. According to one statement in another place, it is said that do we know how many relatives we have had so far in all our lives, previous lives? And then the scripture says, as many grains of sand at the banks of river Ganges. So good luck trying going to count those number of grains of sand. That many relatives we have had so far. And banks of Ganges, it doesn't say in Prayagraj, all over. So this is really mind-boggling. And we think our immediate mother, father, our children, or wife, or relatives in this life, that's all in all. No. Bandhu gyatya madhyastha mitro tasin vidvisha sarva evhi sarvesham bhavanti kramasho mitha. In this material world, which advances like a river that carries away the living entity, all people become friends, relatives, and enemies in due course of time. They also act mutually, they meditate, they despise one another, and they act in many other relationships. Oh, I'm sorry, they say. They also act mutually, they mediate, they despise one another, and they act in many other relationships. Nonetheless, despite these various transactions, no one is permanently related. It's our practical experience in this material world that the same person who is one's friend today becomes one's enemy tomorrow. Our relationships as friends or enemies, family men or outsiders, are actually the results of our different feelings. Chitraketu Maharaj was lamenting for his who was now dead, but he could have considered the situation otherwise. This living entity he could have thought was my enemy in my last life, and now, having appeared as my son, he is prematurely leaving just to give me pain and agony. Why should he not consider his dead son his former enemy and instead of lamenting be jubilant because of an enemy's death? As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Prakriti Kriyamana Gunahe Karmani Sarvesha. So actually everything is happening because of our association with the modes of material nature. Therefore, one who is my friend today in association with the mode of goodness may be my enemy tomorrow in association with the modes of passion and ignorance. As the modes of material nature work in illusion, we accept others as friends, enemies, sons, or fathers in terms of the reactions of different dealings under different conditions. So Prabhupada says a nice thing that actually it is true. One who's my enemy in my previous birth, if he's really, really big enemy, he gets to take birth as my son in this lifetime. So that he gives me so much pain, son or daughter, whatever, so that he gives me so much pain that I cannot do anything. I cannot kick him out and I cannot tolerate him. Or any other relative as that for that matter. But son or daughter, they really get so much pain if they do. And that is really my enemy from previous life. And it is true, it is mentioned in the scriptures. So Prabhupada says the Chitraketu Maharaj should have been happy. Oh, my enemy came, okay, he's gone. He gave me some trouble, but good, he's gone now. Why should I worry so much about it? And why should I lament so much? And this does happen, friend and enemy. Today could be somebody, today somebody could be my friend, and tomorrow he may become my biggest enemy. Or just like as a slang, it is said, "Mauka dekh ke chauka marna." People do that. So nothing is permanent in this material. Nothing. No relationship is also either permanent. यथा वस्तूनि पन्यानि हेमादीनि ततस्ततः पर्यटन्ति नरेष्वेवं जीवो योनिषु कर्तृषु. Just as gold and other commodities are continually transferred from one place to another in due course of purchase and sale, so the living entity, as a result of its fruitive activities, wanders throughout the entire universe, being injected into various bodies and different species of life by one kind of father after another. It has already been explained that Chitraketu's son was his enemy in a past life and had now appeared as a son, just to give him more severe pain. Indeed, the untimely death of the son caused severe lamentation for the father. One may put forward the argument, if the king's son was his enemy, how could the king have so much affection for him? In answer, the example is given that when someone's wealth falls into the hands of his enemy, the money becomes the enemy's friend. Then the enemy can use it for his own purposes. Indeed, he can even use it to harm its previous owner. Therefore, the money belongs neither to one party nor to the other. The money is always money, but in different situations, it can be used as an enemy or a friend. So the king had so much of affection for the son because he still thought, this is my son. He never thought he is my enemy. And the example is given, the money falling into the hands of an enemy. So money may change hands, but the affection for the money remains. It's just like sometimes we sell our car to somebody. He buys a used car, but our attachment for that car is still there. Some attachment is still there. Of course, we know it's his car now and he is our owner of this car, but sometimes that attachment, or a house for that matter, if somebody buys our house and we move into a new house, then some feelings are there, still there. And here, when the son is involved, then definitely Maharaj Chitraketu, as father, he had the affection for the son. Prabhupada further says, as explained in Bhagavad Gita, it is not by one father or mother that the living entity is given his birth. The living entity is a completely separate identity from the so-called father and mother. By the laws of nature, the living entity is forced to enter the semen of a father and be injected into the womb of the mother. He is not in control of selecting what kind of father he will accept. Prakriti kriyamanami. The laws of nature force him to go to different fathers and mothers, just like a consumer commodity that is purchased and sold. Therefore, the so-called relationship of father and son is an arrangement of Prakriti or nature. It has no meaning and therefore it is called illusion. So the jiva cannot choose who's going to be my father or mother in the next life. Otherwise, we'll all choose maybe Ambani or Tata or Birla or Gates, Bill Gates or Elon Musk or whoever. We'll choose them. Who would want to choose some poor beggar on the street and maybe in America or Africa or India, wherever? Who would want to choose that? But it's all chosen for us, depending upon our karma and the desires, but everything is chosen by Prakriti or under higher supervision. Karmana Deva Netrena. So by Deva Netrena, under the supervision of the demigods, everything is chosen. The same living entity sometimes takes shelter of an animal father and mother, and sometimes a human father and mother. Sometimes he accepts a father and mother among the birds, and sometimes he accepts a demigod, father and mother. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore says, Brahmanda Brahmite. Harassed by life after life by the laws of nature, the living entity wanders throughout the entire universe in different planets and different species of life. Somehow or other, if he's fortunate enough, he comes in touch with a devotee who reforms his entire life. Then the living entity goes back home, back to Godhead. Therefore it is said, Janame janame sabe pita mata paye. Krishna Guru nahi mile, Bhaja Hariyai. In the transmigration of the soul through different bodies, everyone in every form of life, be it human, animal, tree, or demigod, gets a father and mother. This is not very difficult. The difficulty is to obtain a bona fide spiritual master and Krishna. Therefore, the duty of a human being is to capture the opportunity to come in touch with the Krishna's representative, the bona fide spiritual master. Under the guidance of the spiritual master, the spiritual father, one can return home back to Godhead. So this is the duty of human life. Not that, okay, I got my son and son is giving me trouble. He doesn't listen to me. He goes and wastes my hard-earned money, and he's not taking care of his health. He's not taking care of me, and he's not taking care of my wife, and so on and so forth. So much problems, troubles, fightings happen all over the world. For what? For something temporary. It's very, very temporary. And then so much happens that we forget the real goal of it, to become devotee of Krishna. Nityasyarthasya sambandho hi anityo drishyate vrishu yavadyasya hi sambandho mamatvam tavadeva hi. A few living entities are born in the human species and others are born as animals. Although both are living entities, their relationships are permanent. An animal may remain in the custody of a human being for some time, and then the same animal may be transferred to the possession of other human beings. As soon as the animal goes away, the former proprietor no longer has a sense of ownership. As long as the animal is in his possession, he certainly has an affinity for it. But as soon as the animal is sold, the affinity is lost. Aside from the fact that soul transmigrates from one body to another, even in this life, the relationships between living entities are impermanent, as exemplified in this verse. The son of Chitraketu was named Harshashok, or jubilation and lamentation. The living entity is certainly eternal, but because he is covered by a temporary dress, the body, his eternity is not observed. Dehino asmin yatha dehe. The embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age. Thus, the bodily dress is impermanent. The living entity, however, is permanent. As an animal is transferred from one owner to another, the living entity who was the son of Chitraketu lived as his son for some time. But as soon as he was transferred to another body, the affectionate relationship was broken. Because that relationship is with the body, not with the soul. We never even consider the soul inside the body and having a relationship with that. But actually, the relationship should be at the level of the soul. But because we see only the body, our relationship is with the body. And as soon as somebody leaves the body or dies, the relationship is broken. As stated in the example given in the previous verse, when one has a commodity in his hands, he considers it his. But as soon as it is transferred, it becomes someone else's commodity. Then one no longer has a relationship with it. He has no affection for it, nor does he lament for it. But as long as that commodity is in our hand, we do everything possible to keep it with us, to protect it, to make sure it remains with us. We do everything possible. And this relationship, changing of body and this and that, There's a nice story that Prabhupada used to tell. And there was a rich man in a village. So he had worked hard to earn money and to make the nice big house, and he had a good family, sons, daughters, wealthy, healthy, everything was nice. And this old man, his time came, so he died. He died, and next birth he took in the same village in a human form, but in the house of a cobbler. Now, when he took birth in that house, so he took up the profession of being a cobbler. And when in his cobbler life, he grew up a little. He was still young boy, and the boys of his previous life, the family, the boys had grown up, and so suppose when he had died, his boys in the previous life, they were 25 years old. And now this boy, he was born in the cobbler's house. Now when he became 25, the boys in the previous house became 50 years old. So this boy, 25-year-old called cobbler, he went to his previous house. Of course, he didn't know this was my previous house, the house from the previous life. So he went there, and then he just knocked on the door, and his sons from previous life, they were talking and they were busy in some business. And he again knocked, and they got so disturbed. They came out and beat him, this boy, cobbler, with the shoes. And he was actually their father from the previous life. So this is life, actually. Everything is tempting. Now to bring that example to more practical level, to another level. Just like India and Pakistan. Now the armies are there, or India and China, the armies are there fighting and this and that. And suppose there happens, and few soldiers from Indian side and few soldiers from Chinese side, they fought and they both died. And it happened also, and it can happen. And it is also said that whatever our consciousness at the time of death will take that form, take that birth, next life. So when suppose Indians are killing Chinese and Chinese are killing Indians, so when they were dying, they must be thinking of each other in an angry mode. So the soul in the Chinese body takes birth in Indian body, and the soul in the Indian body now takes birth in Chinese body. And then they both grow up. 20 some years later, they both again join the army. Now the soul who was in Chinese body, he joins the Indian army, and the soul who was in Indian body, he gets to be born in China, and then he joins the Chinese army. Again, they're at the border. It can happen. It's not impossible. So what are we fighting for? This life I'm Indian. This life somebody is Chinese, somebody is Pakistani, I'm Hindu, somebody is Muslim, somebody is Christian, and we keep on fighting. We're not talking about that pseudo-secularism that Prabhupada is again and again attacked. It's not pseudo-secularism, it's a spirituality. It's a spiritual knowledge. And that's what we have to adopt, and that's what we have to preach to others. To bring people to the level of spirituality, and then only there'll be peace and prosperity in the world. It cannot happen on the bodily level. No way. Evam yoni gato jiva sa nitya nirahankritah yavad yatra uplabhyeta tavat swastvam hi tasya tat. Even though one living entity becomes connected with another because of a relationship based on bodies that are perishable, the living entity is eternal. Actually, it is a body that is born or lost, not the living entity. One should not accept that the living entity takes birth or dies. The living being actually has no relationship with so-called fathers and mothers. As long as he appears as a son of a certain father and mother as a result of his past fruitive activities, he has a connection with the body given by that father and mother. Thus, he falsely accepts himself as his son and acts affectionately. After he dies, however, the relationship is finished. Under these circumstances, one should not be falsely involved with jubilation and lamentation. So this is basically, these are the instructions of Parikshit Maharaj. Do not be so attached with your so-called sons and daughters and the wives. Do your service, but as soon as one dies, the connection is gone. When the living entity lives within the material body, he falsely thinks that he is the body. Actually, he is not. His relationship with this body and his so-called father and mother are false, illusory conceptions. These illusions continue as long as one is not enlightened about the situation of the living entity. So this enlightenment, this knowledge is very, very important. So the relationships are false because the relationship ultimately is with Krishna. But as I said earlier also, so this birth has been given to us by particular father and mother. So it is our duty, very, very big duty to take care of them, to serve them, to look after their needs, their requirements. Esha nityo avyaya sukshama esha sarvashya swadrik atma maya gunar vishwam atmanam srijate prabhu. The living entity is eternal and imperishable because he actually has no beginning and no end. He never takes birth or dies. He is a basic principle of all types of bodies. Yet he does not belong to the worldly category. The living being is so sublime that he is equal in quality to the Supreme Lord. Nonetheless, because he is extremely small, he is prone to be illusioned by the external energy, and thus he creates various bodies for himself according to his different desires. In this verse, the philosophy of Achinta Bheda Bheda, simultaneous oneness and difference is described. The living entity is eternal, Nitya, like the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the difference is that the Supreme Lord is the greatest, no one being equal to or greater than him. Whereas the living entity is Sukshma, extremely small. Shastra describes that the magnitude of the living entity is 1/10,000 the size of the tip of the hair. The Supreme Lord is all-pervading, Andantarastha Parmana Chayantarastha. Relatively, if the living entity is accepted as the smallest, there should naturally be inquiry about the greatest. The greatest is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the smallest is the living entity. So that's the relationship. But quality-wise, we are same. Quantity-wise, we are very minute, infinitesimal, small, so small. Another peculiar characteristic of the jiva is that he becomes covered by Maya. Atma Maya Gune. He is prone to be covered by the Supreme Lord's illusory energy. The living entity is responsible for his conditional life in the material world, and therefore he is described as Prabhu, the Master. If he likes, he can come to this material world, and if he likes, he can return home back to Godhead. Because he wanted to enjoy this material world, the Supreme Lord gave him a material body through the agency of the material energy. As the Lord himself says in Bhagavad Gita, Ishvara Sarva Bhuta, Hrideshe Arjun Tishtati. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjun, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. The Supreme Lord gives the living entity a chance to enjoy in this material world as he desires, but he openly expresses his own desire that the living entity give up all material aspirations, fully surrender unto him, and return home back to Godhead. So it's a choice that has been given to us, whether we want to remain in the material world or whether we want to go back to the spiritual world. Because the living entity is part and parcel of Krishna, and it's his superior energy, spiritual energy. It is in a way better or superior to material energy, and that's why Prabhupada said that's why he's described as Prabhu or the Master. So it's all up to us whether we want to remain in the material world or want to go back to God, to the spiritual world. Maya has been given lots of potencies, but still Maya is material, living entity is spiritual. So he can overcome Maya. It is because of our consciousness that has become material, and because of that we forget our real potency, our real position. And that's when we come under the control of Maya. Just like the example is given of an elephant. An elephant, we know how powerful that animal is. Very, very powerful. He can wrap around his sound or trunk around a tree trunk and just yank it out, just pull it out. It's so powerful. But that elephant, when it is caught by the hunters and he's kept in that ditch for 2-3 days and they don't give him any food, he likes to eat a lot of food. And if he doesn't get food for 2-3 days, he becomes weak. Mentally, he becomes weak. And then they bring him to their place. These hunters bring the elephant to their place, and then they train him, and the training goes in such a way that if he doesn't do what the hunter is saying, then they don't give him food, and they don't give him a she-elephant to enjoy with. So slowly, the elephant, although very powerful, it comes under the capture or under the control of these hunters. And this hunter or a Mahavat, which we call him, if you have seen the elephant on the street, at least in India, we can see that. So Mahavat is a very small guy sitting on top of the elephant with that ankush, a goad in his hand. And the elephant thinks, oh, he's gonna hit me with that ankush and it will hurt me. The elephant can easily just pull that little bit Mahavat down, kill him, and go run towards the forest, be free. But he doesn't do that because his whole programming has been like that. He becomes conditioned that I have to listen to this Mahavat, and if I don't, I will not get food and I'll not get the she-elephant. Same situation with us. Same. We think if we don't work hard in this material world, we cannot have money to feed ourselves. We cannot have money to enjoy ourselves. And this is, we have to keep on working hard every day, and so that my boss will give me some money, and then only I can enjoy. No, there is so much of enjoyment in the spiritual life. And also, conditioned, we become conditioned that if I don't act like this way or that way, then I'll get punished by Maya. But we forget that we are living entities. We are the spiritual energy. We are part and parcel of Krishna. We have the same potencies as Krishna. Of course, to a very small degree, but we have the same potencies. But we have forgotten. So yoga, bhakti yoga process, or any other yoga means the purpose is to revive that consciousness. Oh, I cannot be happy here. No, I can be very happy in relationship with Krishna. We don't need that material, bodily relationships which are friendly now and it can become enemy later. If we have the relationship with Krishna, he'll never become our enemy. No way. He says, I'll take care of you, I'll protect you. We have to have faith and make Krishna as our friend. He'll never forsake us. Kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati. He says, Arjuna declared it boldly that my devotee never perishes. So all we have to do is become his devotee, make this resolution in our hearts that I have to come to my real position, real constitutional, original position, and forget that what we are right now. We can just use these material assets, this body and whatever our possessions, to serve Krishna, to make more further and further progress. That's what we should do. Prabhupada further says, the living entity is the smallest, Sukshma. Jiva Goswami says in this connection that the living entity within the body is extremely difficult for materialistic scientists to find. Although we understand from authorities that the living entity is within the body. The body is different from the living entity. The body is not the soul. It is different. Soul is different, body is different. And Prabhupada had given that example. If we ask somebody, okay, what is this? This is my hand, this is my head, and these are my shoulders. This is my chest, this is my tummy, these are my legs, and this is my body. And when we say my body means I am different from the body. It's like we said, this is my car, this is my house. So I'm not the car, I'm not the house. So similarly, when we say this is my body, so I'm not the body. So that way we can understand, but we have to bring it into realization stage. That is important. So I guess we can stop here. These shlokas are very, very heavy. Purport Prabhupada. Well, let us go one more verse, then Shivda Goswami will start speaking. Nadatatma hi gunam na dosham na kriya phalam udasin vadasina paravar drigishvaraha. Oh no, there are two verses. No, okay, let's stop here. So text and we'll do it tomorrow. Any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, these verses are so nice. It gives so much of realization that what we are, and like it's quite usual we lament on our dearly ones when they pass away. But after I think multiple times when you read this, then you have that realization comes where you don't have to lament because anyways we are changing bodies one after 1 second, maybe millions of times. So somebody will be our father, mothers. It's just a
Yep.
relation. Connection is over. It's all gone. Beautiful verses, Prabhuji.
Yeah, and heavy. Now it is getting heavy and heavy.
Yeah, but so fortunate and so lucky to have hearing this, Prabhuji. That's really nice. Never heard. Uh, at least come to know that these are all things are there in Bhagavatam. Beautiful verses.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so I guess we can stop here. You all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shila Prabhupada.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.